Pony Express. Check out their line of penetration testing devices, including the Pwn Pad, the Pwn Phone, and the Pwn Pro. For enterprises, there's Pwn Pulse, providing continuous visibility into wired, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth spectrums across all physical locations, including remote sites and branch offices. For all those hard-to-reach places, there's Pony Express. Visit them on the web at ponyexpress.com. Tenable Network Security, creators of Nessus, the world's best vulnerability scanner. Jumpstart your security program today and evaluate Security Center CV, the continuous monitoring solution. For more information, visit them on the web at tenable.com. Onapsis, the leading provider of solutions to protect ERP systems from cyber attacks. Customers can secure their SAP and Oracle business-critical platforms from espionage, sabotage, and financial fraud risks. Visit them on the web at onapsis.com. To Security Weekly. This is the security news for this week. Top story this week, at least, well, it was for me. H.G. Moore is leaving Rapid7.
Yes.
Discuss.
Oh God.
How much money do you think they offered him? No, HD, don't go. Here's all of the money.
Here's all the money.
Yeah. we got all the bags of money out. Please don't leave. Yeah.
I also think that they're going to continue to pay him. He'll probably continue to do some consulting and show up for things on the side because it looks like he's moving into like a VC capital type role. So I think that he might be available to still do some stuff for Rapid7.
Yeah, it's interesting where he was going. I think it's going to be, I think it's going to be good for HD. It's going to be a very exciting role for him to be in a company that's funding security startups. So
here's a thought that I have. Like, and I've met HD several times, had a lot of conversations with him about various things. And
anything security related?
No. Most of it, actually, that's a good question. Most of it is actually pure research and development related because HD is very much a researcher at heart, and security is sort of a byproduct. But what I'd like to know is what kind of role he's going to play, and I'd love to see if we can get him back on the show to talk about that as much as he can, because I find the choice an interesting choice. So I'd love to hear his direct opinion on what is this move, how tangential is it to his R&D efforts at heart, and what's his future directions.
I heard he might actually be taking a role as a director of operations for a new startup. Again, this is just things I've heard through the grapevine in Boston. There's a security startup based out of Canada. They have some of the was it ISDF, Israeli Self-Defense Force. You have a guy from there, you got a guy from NSA, former crypto, and I believe they're called Threat.
I wonder if I know him.
Threatbutt.
Okay.
Threatbutt.
Threatbutt.
Yeah.
Is that the rumor you're starting?
I heard
HD's
that.
going to
He
work for
awesome.
Threatbutt.
He's going to be the director of operations of
and
Threatbutt.
I hear that our man Serge is heading up their PR department.
Oh, great job of it too.
Yeah. So if it's more of a sort of chief scientist, chief researcher of angle, I can totally see it.
You're saying he likes to research the threat butts, the butts of the threat.
The butts of threats.
He likes the.
No. HD's a guy.
He likes the big threat butts, and he cannot lie.
He cannot lie.
HD's a pure scientist at heart, in my opinion. He loves to research any interesting problems and get to the very end. What
the hell was that?
What?
Yeah, what? Yeah,
who's not with us anymore?
It's Santa.
Santa.
Oh, he's on the other machine now. I see him.
Yeah,
Santa fell down the stairs.
Complete disconnect.
For some reason, sort of pixelating from you guys. I don't know why. We've annoyed the Skype gods or something.
We have.
So I'm kind of curious if HD is going to be taking more of like a mentorship role for some of these companies.
Yeah, no, that's
I believe his blog post said like early on startups or startups are early in their development, and typically when you are involved, you are very much in a mentorship role. Which, how great would it be to have HD in your corner?
Yeah.
So, Paul, if you don't mind me saying, HD, if you get to listen to this, come talk to us. We'd love to have you back on the show.
Yeah, I'm going to give HT, before I start bugging him, I'm going to give him time to get his bearings, get settled, and then invite him on the show. That's my plan. So
And figure out which butts he's
Threading.
he's
threading.
He's threading.
Threading.
You know, it's worth mentioning what Josh just pointed out. The part that I kind of looked at is that when I go out and I talk to folks now, we have no shortage of security startups. And what's going to define success versus failure for a lot is their ability to rapidly and effectively communicate what they're doing so that people get it, so they understand it. Well, if you got HD in your corner, I think that's going to help. So it'll be curious to see how this works out. But if nothing else, that's going to be, at least for the foreseeable future, a good way to rise above the noise quickly.
Yeah. HD Moore, second only to Paul Asadorian.
Yeah, right.
Well, yeah, not
in
everybody
terms
can
of
be
butt.
Paul.
In terms of
Butts
what?
or
Threat?
threats?
Butting?
In terms of butt threats and
Butt
ask
threats.
grabby grabby,
And ask
isn't this
grabby
all
grabby.
connected?
I am I'm
The
the
reigning champion
the CEO of
of
Ask
butt
Grabby
threading.
Grabby tournament.
Threatbutt
University.
Intel Solutions something.
Yeah, but what is that sweatshirt you've got on? Oh my God, it's a Panthers week, dude.
It says
Come on.
I try not to watch what Paul wears from week to week.
Panthers. Blur the rest of the letters.
Whatever.
We can Photoshop it later.
All I can say is goat. That's all I have to say.
Goat,
Goat.
goat boy. Ah.
So, FireEye buys iSight partners for $200 million.
Wow.
And further proof that we're in a bubble.
You think we're in a bubble, John? I would. I mean, when things like this happen,
Yeah.
I don't pretend to know intimately what iSight Partners was doing in the industry. I know I've heard their name, seen a little bit about what they do. Kind of something for FireEye.
What
for
do
me.
they do?
Is FireEye's
Intel.
business model?
Threat intel, yeah.
iSight does. Largely.
Oh
threat.
shit! So they do jack shit then. Sorry.
Why do you
I
hate
hate
threat intelligence so much, John?
Because it's bullshit. And it's total snake oil. And I would love for somebody to come on the show and debate this.
You missed that show.
That never happens in this industry.
Michael and I
Come on.
debated it on a show a while back, and we got great feedback on it. And I think there are some positives, John, that you're missing. I agree that largely the way that people use threat intelligence is atrocious. But I think there's some positives there. Go back. I'll send you the link to that, John.
I'm gonna take derp and I'm gonna fight derp with it. So if you go to the Verizon data breach report, speaking of derp, and I think it's on page 8, they have one paragraph on threat intelligence.
Not that he
They say that they
obsesses over
pulled
this.
together. Oh, I'm completely obsessed over this. I'm not even trying to hide the fact that I'm obsessed over it.
Okay.
But buying a threat intelligence feed, they said they purchased something like the top X number of threat intelligence feeds, and then they compared them to see how much overlap there was between all of the threat intelligence feeds that are out there that you can purchase. There was 5% overlap. And rather than saying threat intelligence is complete and utter crap, they basically said, well, to be completely covered, you should probably buy all of them. then.
Buy all of them.
Okay, I will debate John on this one.
Do it.
So, John, of the threat
Spend more
intelligence
money.
feeds,
Wait a minute, who is this? Is
That's
this
Apollo.
Is this Josh?
That's Apollo.
This is our bartender. So
El
treat him
Pollo
nice.
Asesino. is on
Okay,
the
let's go.
mic.
Let's go for it,
Let's
Apollo.
do it toe to toe.
That's Josh.
So let's. Sorry. Josh. So let's say 5% is overlapping. I don't think that's a bad thing because you look at what the sources are. So let's say we already know for a fact that the banking industry does threat intelligence amongst themselves.
Yep.
How much of their threats are different from, let's say, healthcare, different from, let's say, manufacturing? If there's not a lot of overlap between those, I would not be surprised by that.
Oh, delightful. So if you actually sit down with these corporations and you actually have conversations with them, and one of the main conversations that I get into through IONS with companies that are talking about threat intelligence over the past 18 months, talking to a lot of these banks, a lot of the financial institutions, a lot of people in industry, is what the hell do we do with this? And almost every single one of them, in fact, every single company that I've talked to through IONS discussing threat intelligence feeds and how we actually implement them and how do we implement them correctly, every single one of them says the same thing when I ask this question. Does it actually change your behavior in your organization based on something that you get from a threat intelligence feed? And they get all quiet. They're like, well, no, we never. No.
Okay, so theoretical
no,
scenario.
that's number one. Number
go ahead.
two, If you also look at the malware that is deployed in organizations, because people use threat intelligence feeds so they can generate indicators of compromise. And if you look at an indicators of compromise, it's basically taking this idea of a blacklist that didn't work for AV, doesn't work for IDS, doesn't work for IPS, and basically saying, let's come up with far more complicated blacklisting for identifying malware. We don't reuse the exact same malware. And 98% of the breaches, or high 90s, of the breaches that they talked about in all the different reports, if you look at Mirror, if you look at the Verizon data breach report, in targeted attacks, they use custom malware in every single one of those situations. The threat intelligence feed would do effectively crap for actually detecting it. So if we look at it, the organizations I've discussed in teaching classes and going into conference calls with IONS, talking to these organizations, they consistently say they get no value from it, number one. Number two, if you look at the attacks themselves, they're constantly morphing from organization to organization because it's easy to do. So I'm going to shut up for a couple of seconds and let you respond.
Well, what's the alternative then, John?
We already talked about this topic, John. You just weren't here for it. You need to go back and listen.
So I'll be pedantic. How are they morphing?
So,
How are they morphing between organizations?
morphing?
Yeah, so let's say, I'm thinking, let's say I'm, from the Romanian hacker city, and I want to target all of the new smartphone mobile payment systems, for example, because those are new up and coming, a lot of money there, easy target because a lot of them are startups. If I'm from one of these organizations, I would reuse the malware. I'd repackage it a little bit, and I would change the attack vectors a little bit. But the fundamentals of, how they're getting in, what they're doing, and pivoting around, I would think those would be similar if a given organization was targeting a certain industry.
You know what? I agree with you 110%. But you don't need to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a threat intelligence feed. They're going to target you through spear phishing.
Yeah, but that's not what Apollo said, though.
No, but he's talking about the techniques, about how they initially exploit and how
but
pivot
he wasn't
around the
talking
environment.
about budget. I think you have a very emotional attachment to this, John, is what I'm getting
I
at.
do.
Well, no, John,
I think we need to separate the emotions from the facts, John.
I will stand up for John on this one. Budget matters.
It
budget
does, but
matters.
that wasn't the context of the conversation you were
wasn't.
just having.
I was
No,
gonna
no,
ask,
but what
I mean,
I'm saying,
all these
what I'm
banks that
saying
you've been
is-
talking to. Oh, go ahead, John.
yes, what I was going to say is I can tell you how attackers gain access to networks. I can tell you how they pivot around the environment, and you don't need to spend $150,000 a year on a threat intelligence feed to learn it.
So how many of those banks that you've been talking to in the last, whatever the time period was you mentioned, when you point out that it's all useless information, how many of them stop subscribing?
But see, there's the point. I'm not telling these people for the past 18 months that it's useless. I've came to this conclusion after talking to them, listening to their problems, figuring out how they are using it effectively and not, and almost consistently across the board, they're not using it. Number one, they're not using it effectively. Number two, it's not even something you can effectively freaking use. It's basically a club of getting stories about how malware in this particular organization work because it isn't changing. The tactics that they use to exploit are spear phishing. The tactics they use for pivoting around the environment are SMB. The tactics for creating malware are the same tactics that we use at BHS all the time, and they're not getting any value out of it.
So it sounds like it sounds like potentially they're using it and they're paying dearly through the nose for it, but it's a FUD stream that you would think that they're using in their organization to, and a budget comes in, purchase something, countermeasures.
So, John, would you say the
Technologies.
majority of these attacks are just low-hanging fruit kind of things?
The majority of the attacks absolutely are low-hanging fruit. The majority of the attacks are the exact same thing that we were dealing with 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years ago. Spearfish, get someone to click a link, compromise the system, pivot.
It's funny. I was at I did a panel 2 weeks ago that was discussing breach readiness or how to respond to a breach. And the panel has a lawyer, somebody from Secret Service, and somebody from the FBI.
I think this is a joke setup. What's the punchline?
Well,
Just go right there.
maybe. Which one do you throw out? No. The FBI guy was saying, well, really what we try to tell our companies that, they're not their customers, they're the victims that they're helping out. They say, you should really separate a lot of your operations from the internet. Don't let people at their desktops have free and open access to the internet. And I'm like, yeah, in what company are you seeing them actually doing that, where that's actually something they can do? Yeah, so
Ones that have been breached.
possibly, but
All of them, or is that
all
the
of
same
them,
thing?
I would say none of them.
Quite a few of them. Quite a few of them. And this is one of the things we talked about yesterday on the webcast. You can do internet whitelisting. You just have to be smart about how you do it. Organizations think that you're going to have to approve each and every website with a star chamber. But the fact is, if you basically whitelisted the top 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 legitimate sites your users go to, most of them won't notice it, and you'll be infinitely more secure than you would be with the standard blacklisting approach.
Okay. Well, I think he was suggesting don't let them have internet access in the first place.
And
Don't
I
let
think
them
I would
on-
agree with you.
Don't let them on
That-
the social networks and all that kind of stuff.
And I would agree with you. That's completely wrong because they're going to circumvent.
Yeah.
Yep.
Apollo, you and I were talking about this Linux kernel vulnerability.
Yeah, so again, I tried about this yesterday, so I was a little fuzzy in the details. But basically, there was some kind of vulnerability with trying to do a buffer overflow with the key rings being stored in kernel memory.
Yes, CVE 2016-0728.
Yeah, that one,
That one.
that number.
That was on my screen.
that's it.
So
There you go.
that would imply that it's actually 2016.
Yeah.
I'm there
That's
now.
a good clue.
That's
You-
good. It's good.
So
Yeah, you
from
got
what
it.
I was reading literally this morning as I was coming up here was, a few other security researchers tried to recreate this attack, and they said that the attack itself is extremely difficult to recreate, and the vast majority of the time, like 90% plus, it doesn't actually work. So some more cynical bloggers were saying that, maybe pretty true or maybe not, that you can find these kind of vulnerabilities by doing static analysis, and you can find these kind of sinks within the system. And they're theoretically possible, but in practice, they're really not that bad. And some vendors may be finding these things and saying, hey, look what we found, we're so smart.
On the password front, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. According to this article from Darknet, sourced from Splash Data, so I question the source a little bit. I'm not sure where they get their data from. However,
Probably
they have
from a
published
password
something.
file.
Yeah, they have published something on the internet that says the number one password, commonly used passwords for 2015. Number one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Again?
Again. Yeah, and like the second one is password, right? Like we could run the story like every year, and it never changes.
Is that a vulnerability? How do you manage it?
It's interesting. We had that whole conversation about vulnerability management, talking about vulnerabilities, right?
Right.
And this even falls outside of, is it a configuration, right? Is it something, it's not really a configuration on a system.
Well, it could be. I mean, if you don't have password complexity,
It could,
that's
yep.
a configuration.
But it's something that the user chooses.
right.
And how easy or difficult is that to control?
Well, it's authentication, right? When you think about password systems, what's interesting about this is, I call it the annual parade of negativity of worst passwords, and it's self-defeating, and we got to knock it off. But aside from that, what's fascinating is we go focus on it. So first question to ask is, how are we getting these lists of passwords? It's not because we're breaking them one at a time because people are using crappy passwords. It's because you didn't implement your system properly and you're not maintaining and operating it properly. And those are far bigger threats, far bigger problems. Those are absolutely vulnerabilities and configuration errors. Now, in terms of
Those
how
are
people
not
are
threats; those are vulnerabilities.
yeah, that's just the way that you're using your system. And so again, we like to point it out and we go, oh, look at ha ha ha. Here's proof people are stupid. They don't understand. I'll tell you what's interesting, and it's funny. I was trying to get my article on this done today. I'm going to run it tomorrow and post this up because what I'm looking at is our drive. It's interesting, Jeff, that you brought up complexity rules. Our drive for complexity has created obscurity. And what's interesting is this has made the rounds and it caught the national media and then it goes to local media. We have a local TV show here that they call Not the News, and they mock all this type of stuff from the news. This got up on there and people freely admitted they don't care. And that's when you get the goofy mini Mickey, like I had 7 characters, or I need the ticket stub from Star Wars and the blood of a first child. And so what's happened is we have disconnected people so far from this process that they don't even care anymore. And then we sit there every year and go, yep, see, look, just telling you again how stupid you are. If you got one of these, you should change them. And then we do that whole, well, see, people will never learn. This is why we can't have nice things. And that's got to stop.
Yeah, but from the user,
I would like to know though, with these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 passwords, is if you took out all the Yahoo email accounts, the
Right.
Gmail email accounts,
Right.
Yeah.
and
What's
you
it
got
for?
down to
AOL.
like corporate ones.
Yeah, what's it for?
So,
It's a
I mean,
throw
my
if you-
Ashley
if you
Madison
pull the
account was
corporate
password
accounts-
123.
Does it change?
Right. Well,
It's a great
and
question,
but the
Tom.
other thing too is, from a user perspective, when they do choose a so-called a more secure password than 12346 or password, when they forget it, the process and the pain that they feel, I feel like drives them back to choosing 12345 6. So if I forget my password, they're like, "Oh, you forgot your password. So now I'm going to send you an email, and you have to remember which email account that was going to. And if you can remember that, I'll give you a link. And after you follow that link, you have to remember those security questions that I asked you like 6 months ago when you created this account, for which, oh yeah, security person in my life told me to make up fake answers to these questions because they're just like passwords. Then you have to try and remember those. And then when you can't, then you're logged out. Then when you call up the place, even if you can, to say, hey, I need to reset my account, they're like, no, you have to answer your security questions. And I'm like, fuck, I don't remember the fake place
1, 2,
that I
3,
went on
4, 5, 6
vacation
is
with my
looking
wife
a
for
whole
the
lot
first
different.
time.
I'll stick with that. So then we've also said to people, right? Oh, you have to have a long, complex password. Here, use a password manager. How many times do we get frustrated and openly bitch about the fact that there are sites that limit it? There are financial sites, I won't name any names, PayPal, that limit you. You can't have longer than 19 characters.
Oh yes, and who was that? A GSA? I can't remember who. OPM, company that just got compromised. You can, if you try to put in a long password, it comes back and says, "I'm sorry, your password is too long."
Too long.
What? How? Too buku? How does that work?
Right.
Unix used to allow unlimited passwords up to what?
No, you know what
256
I love too,
characters,
though?
But it only counted the first 8.
I can give this site a 20. I can give this site a 25 character password, and they're like, "No, not good enough. You need a special character in there."
Right.
So
So,
like, why?
So now add all that up,
Yes.
and there's no consistency of experience. It's driving
Right.
us mad. And then we wonder why people are choosing stuff that's simple and easy to remember, and then it's their fault.
Oh no! I
Yeah,
don't think
just
it's
let
their
them use.
fault at all.
Just make their passwords long.
I had to
You can do
log
whatever
into
that- just-
I had to log into a site yesterday, and it's one of these sites that I log into once a year, so I have no idea what my password is. So I did the password reset. This particular site not only made me well, of course they're like, "We'll send your password to your email." I got it. I'm like,
Which
okay.
is worrisome because
But
it means they're
what's-
storing it in clear
but what's
text.
my user ID? And I'm trying to figure. I was like, okay, I forgot my user
Forgot.
ID.
Yeah, you got to do the forgot user
They
ID.
made me reset the user ID.
So you have to choose a different.
I had to choose a new user ID, which, of course, the next time I log on to this site a year from now, I
Right.
won't remember what it is. I'm like,
But the funny part is that you talk about a password
my
manager.
God.
After you go through that process, my password manager is fucking confused. It's like,
Yeah.
I go log in the site. There's like 5 different sets of credentials. It has no idea what order to send them in.
I just
And
use the same password everywhere.
That's
all.
right. That saves
what
you
I
the
do.
whole.
Yeah.
That's
So-
like using a password
So,
manager, right?
But we've been saying the wrong word the whole time. Length, not complexity, matters.
Width?
Width
Girth?
And girth.
is
Girth is important.
Girth is.
and we've got to call it a passphrase. Because, guys, you know, in the
Yeah.
conversation with any of our organizations that we test, we want them to go not to, 10 characters, not to 12, but just go on out to 15 to 20. You know, take the bite of the apple, go to passphrase, go to phrase. Forget the complexity stuff. Except maybe some substitutions for words with digits and maybe a little bit of punctuation.
But how much
But
do
give
we?
the users the ability to remember the damn thing, because the complexity rules is what's fucking it up to remember it.
But how much of this can we make it a better user experience if we implement the 2-factor authentication like Google, where it texts me.
we can.
It texts me a code, right? I have to have my phone,
Yeah.
and then does that really help? I somewhat question it.
Yes.
I
Yes and no.
agree with John, strangely, but I'm a firm supporter of 2-factor authentication. I think it's an excellent Wow.
Well, and what we're finding is
Compensating
because
control.
you bring up usability, we're finding that not only is it a good strategy, the usability of it's really increasing. And we're starting, look, for those of us that have been doing this long enough, we were taught don't talk to people in usability and design and security. You don't need that. And they were taught avoid those security people at all costs. You know what happens when you start getting together? Hey, you're getting stuff that people actually use. It makes sense and it makes our jobs easier. No, I think it's a good strategy. And, Joff's right in terms of, it's we focus on the wrong things. What I usually say to people is if you ask the average person, even security person, how a password works, you get a very strange array of answers and few of them are accurate. So then when we ask them, what you need, we repeat this dogmatic stuff that we've heard. Well, it must have an uppercase and a lowercase because, that's for the complexity and it changes the key space. Ha ha ha. Do you know what key space is? And we go on, and it's like, yeah, but if I had a 20-character password, that's going to be better than your 8-character. You're like, no, it's not. Yeah, but it is.
And kind of going on that, there was a book that came out, how to come up with a strong password. It was a book. It was a goddamn book.
I found an XKCD
It had more than one page, and on that more than one page, it had more than one sentence apparently.
Yeah,
it was a goddamn book.
But
and
John,
I saw reviews on it on Amazon.
No, I like to think John and I are like
Chapter 1.
We're pretty good at this like internet
First
thing.
character
But
1.
even John recently, like I in PGP encrypted you some passwords, and you're like, dude, that didn't work. But I'm like, I used the password and I did the ID and the username and the picture of the dog and then the password, and it worked for me. And John's like,
why do they ask me to pick a picture and I'm supposed to remember the next time I log on? That was the picture.
John and I can't even figure out how to log into shit, dude. Like, what does that tell you about usability? We can't figure it out.
One time I had literally had 12 two-factor auth logins on my phone. I couldn't remember them because we had 3 deployments, prod, testing, and dev. And honestly, day to day, I would mess it up like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so two-factor auth is good technologically, but still usability against multiple systems, it gets a little
So
tedious.
we're beyond two-factor.
That's a good point.
The funniest story is when we locked ourselves out of the bank and my wife called the bank, but my wife wasn't me. And even though she knew the answers to the question and I was clearly in the room, they
You're
like
clearly
flipped
not
out.
a Paul.
They're flipped out. I'm like, so what are you preventing against? Like, someone has a battery connected to my nipples. Like, really? Really?
The best
really?
password.
You're like,
That
I called
was
that
a visual.
Thursday night.
Or it's
Like, that comes
Joff,
later in the evening, but still.
the best way to
Joff,
break someone's
that's
password.
Friday night at the Asadorian house.
Yes.
So a question for John and Joff, since they're pen testers, though. How often are you breaking into systems because you're finding a weak password, exploiting a weak
the time.
password?
Every goddamn time.
So,
Okay.
so
everyone
we're
forget what we just said about trying to make things better.
we're
because-
20 years into this.
You think I get pissed about threat intelligence? Get me started on that.
Okay.
We use. I just have to say we use a technique called password spraying commonly, where we will use a single, very common, well-used password across multiple thousand accounts.
Exactly.
And
Weak
invariably,
password versus
we will
password
get
reuse.
numerous correct answers.
So even though you don't like this 2015 top 15 list, you're going to add it to your
Well,
toolkit.
no, because most of those are already in it.
You already know.
Yeah.
But like the password that Joff's talking about, there's one password. Actually, there's 3. 3
Why
passwords.
don't you say what it is?
Post-exploitation.
And then
Oh no, I'll
thousands
say
of
it.
people will change it.
Okay. So here's the deal, and you'll see why. So last summer, the password we used, password spraying, post-exploitation with a for loop, was summer 2015.
Oh my
We
God,
get into
they
an
work
environment,
really well.
and it's in SANS 504. It's in book 4. It's on slide 32. It says summer 2015.
That's probably not going to work
And then
this
this
year.
fall, it was fall 2015. Right now, the main password is winter 2016. That one, password 1234, change me, and company name 123 are the ones that post exploitation we will get domain administrator if your organization is large enough.
It's just astonishing. I mean, what John said, he said them out loud. Dead accurate. I mean, just about every test we do, we'll spray across an environment, and we will find credentials with one of those passwords. And then, of course,
What's
it's
astonishing
escalation
is
to-
20 years into this, we collectively as an industry haven't figured this out.
Yeah, why can't we like do that? Encourage organizations to like do that on their own and just disable accounts that have those passwords.
What's that Unix thing? When we run pass, pass goes against the dictionary and says,
Yeah,
"Oh,
yeah.
this is not a good password. Don't use this."
Right.
That's so easy to implement.
I'm glad you said Unix, not Linux, because I was getting ready to slap you.
Now,
if you
out of
said-
curiosity,
So-
do you have
so-
to do
so-
permutations of Winter 2016? Yes. Okay.
You do.
So
You
you're
do have to
getting-
do some permutations.
You're doing all
Yeah,
the OK
if
rad.
Same
there
thing with
are-
Change Me.
if-
Change Me. There's a lot of
Right.
different
So
permutations. yeah.
if there are password complexity rules in place, we would use Winter 2016 and put exclamation point on the end, for example.
Sure. Capital W.
Or the
of
I would,
course.
yep, or the I would
I's a
become
one. The
exclamation
E's
point.
a
Or one. Yeah.
Leet speak.
3.
Yep.
So there are
So-
variants of it, but it's still quite astonishing, in a multi-thousand account organization, which many of them are, that we will find,
That
accounts.
doesn't surprise
So
me
I'm kind
at
of
all.
curious, how many of these really weak passwords, password reuse, do you find on production systems versus internal dev systems?
I'm
just kinda curious.
it
It's a
doesn't matter.
rhetorical question.
Yeah, I mean, when there's a
There is
domain,
no-
it almost doesn't matter because
Yeah,
even
it
if you
doesn't
get into a
matter.
lower level system, then there's techniques to get to domain administrators.
As a
So you
developer-
almost don't need to get into production. You get into one and
I mean, why
kinda
aren't
escalate.
all
Yeah, my answer was going to
admin
be all
accounts
production.
two-factor
As a
these days?
developer, we have always used weak passwords internally for just literally ease of use.
Right.
So
Well,
Yeah.
it's all
I'm
about
not
ease of
surprised you
use.
find those in dev, but in prod,
Everybody.
And then once it goes from dev into staging, and then it goes to quality assurance, and then it goes to prod, that password
Exactly.
still exists.
The password still
Doesn't
exists.
go away.
Yeah, even I
Sorry.
mean, you may change it in all the places you think that it exists, but there's always a couple of like fringe cases that it stays.
Now,
Yep.
now here's
picking on
here's
the
the gig. Good, I want to talk vulnerability management for a second. There is nothing to stop an organization from taking the encrypted representation of their passwords and running hashes against all of the most common passwords of that as an offline cracking attack and finding out what the problems are. There is
So
nothing to stop them doing.
So let's give them some recommendations on how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, let's
So if
turn
you're
this
gonna-
and make it
let's-
positive.
Okay, so let's make this a mini tech segment. If you're going to do this, don't ever use a password dumping tool against a domain of over 5,000 people.
Because
It's
you
going to
break it.
crash it. Yep,
Yeah.
it's going to inject into LSAS and it's going to crash.
It's
So
gonna
what you
hold
wanna
on,
do-
but be specific. It's gonna crash the domain controller.
It's going to
Yes.
crash the domain controller by injecting into the local security authority subsystem service and die.
That's bad. Bad.
So the best way to do it is
And you
use
know
the
that from
volume shadow-
experience, John?
Oh, I've heard.
my friend
He
Bob
read it in
says-
a book on passwords. Don't do this.
Yeah, have you ever
Read
heard,
that book about-
ever heard your system administrator go, "Oh shit"?
Shit, yeah.
Well, it's the equivalent for a pen tester.
Right. Oh, we did that. We did that in the lab with randomly generated accounts. Right. Okay. Carry on.
So dump it from volume shadow copy. If you want to know how, just Google volume shadow copy password dump. Dump it from volume shadow copy, and then use a tool like OCL Hashcat Plus and give it a dictionary of these commonly used passwords and make sure that word mangling is enabled. It'll automatically go through if you have summer 2015 and do the leet speak substitutions for you. If you don't want to set up a password cracking system with like GPUs and everything, John the Ripper still works fantastic with dictionary-based attacks and word mangling. Then you'll know. So that's the best thing that you can do.
Well, Apollo was telling me before the show that you can buy Amazon AWS instances with GPUs.
Where they're actually rocking
Yep.
the Titan X,
can-
and those things are really powerful. I think they have like 3,800 cores on them.
Yeah.
I had a friend.
can-
who
You don't
was
want
in-
to. You don't want to build it and power it in your data center. You can pay what, $250 a month, or
Yeah,
pay for
I mean,
use on it
I
when
was
you just
gonna
pay
say,
for when you use
per
it.
hour,
Word to
you're
the
paying
wise.
$1.25 to use a high-end GPU on Amazon.
So,
pretty
so
good.
John and Joff.
Word to the wise, though, it does get expensive because I actually built an image that on AWS that was exclusively dedicated to cracking. And if you have a long-term instance run, even if you're running it just on the spare cycles, I forgot what Amazon calls it now, but they have a
Yep.
straight
Yeah, their
up
pricing
spare
model's
Spots,
weird.
spot
Yeah.
instances.
and it's kind of an open free market thing. It still can get expensive because you end up using a heck of a lot of computing power. So
I got you.
Yeah, I paid that bill, and it was cheaper for me to build a password cracking unit and
Yep.
just have it here.
there you go.
So you didn't. So you totally went past trying to tell people to use better passwords. I'm curious, John and Joff, how often do you find rather than going into the details, just collectively, people that should know better. How many times are you finding the weak
All the time.
passwords there? All the
The
time.
C-suite.
All the time.
You
Just
know,
people.
admins.
We got to have Larry into this too. Let's be honest.
Sure.
Yeah.
I got my start at the knee of Guardians, and Larry is in the midst of it, and I'd love to hear Larry's take on this stuff as well. But all the time.
So is it just that's the reality? There's no reason to try to teach people to use better passwords?
It's awesome because a lot of times they'll come up with really, really good passwords, and then we'll use Mimikatz to pull those passwords.
Mm-hmm.
And my favorite example of this is Bryce Galbraith from Layered Security. He got a password from an organization, and the password was something, "You're never going to crack this, Bryce." So it was like, and it was in memory clear. I just got an email from somebody that told me that I need to apologize in some respects on the threat intelligence thing. So I got to get this off my chest. Number one, I'm not against threat intelligence. I think cyber threat intelligence is fantastic.
Just don't,
Only-
John. Just please
let
do
me
me one
finish, let me
favor.
finish.
Please don't apologize, because that's a sign of weakness. Don't do that. Don't
said
do that.
cyber.
When I'm weak, I'm weak.
That's good.
I'm saying buying threat intelligence feeds is shit. You can't pay for intelligence. You can build it up on your own, and there's right ways to do that. So somebody called me out, and they also said I owed Apollo a big apology, because next time I'm out in Rhode Island, he's going to spike my drink and kill me.
Frankly, I don't think I can spike that drink enough to kill you.
Don't
I've
whatever
seen
they
you.
did to kill that.
That's easy. It's
KGB
easy.
agent.
Just put alcohol in it.
Yeah.
Don't
Don't apologize because you have an opinion and you backed it up.
At the
okay?
worst case,
Oh,
you have a fun
I will
time.
go against threat intelligence feeds all day long, but I
It's
think
fine.
cyber threat
It's-
intelligence is good.
No,
So-
I don't think there's an apology needed.
Worst
maybe
case, you have a good
maybe clarification.
Well, my mom listens to the show.
Your
and she
mom
shot
is
me
the
this
one that
email,
emailed you?
and she's just like, "You're being a dick," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, mom."
You don't think
So,
it's
uh,
opinionated
This is
and
obligatory.
informational.
My mom called me.
And big shout out. Hi, John's mom. I'm probably gonna get an email about that.
So there you have it, Apollo. I apologize.
Don't
Stop
worry about it.
apologizing.
Paul says it's a sign of weakness.
Christ.
I take it as a sign of respect.
Knock it off.
Now, does your
But next
mom,
thing
does
you
your
know, you're-
mom use strong passwords?
Next thing you know, you're gonna be wearing Uggs and using beard conditioner. Come on now.
She prefers long passwords. So I don't know where you're going with that question, but now
So
you know.
I use
but
LastPass.
that's the solution, actually. I mean, moving to a passphrase model is the way to go. Moving to second factor is the way to go. And I'm a firm supporter in password vaulting as well, because you get to use vaults and use considerable complexity and length uniquely across all your different services, especially in the web space, and that's a big win.
LastPass
that's
lets
my
you
opinion.
audit them.
And also Google two-factor authentication. When Rick set up our open VPN instance, and he has like Google two-factor, they're working with it. It just hit me. This is so stupid simple. Like, it should be implemented everywhere for everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep in mind, by the way, Amazon, if you're not using it, Amazon just implemented Google as a two-factor authentication option.
So for all the users out there, use two-factor, multi-factor. We recommend Google.
And we recommend the same to all the ladies out there as well.
Uh-oh. John just got another email from his mother.
Another apology coming.
I just want to point out an article that Jim Salter did an an excellent job.
Paul's trying to get control again.
No, talking about wireless routers and what some of the off-the-shelf stuff does, and what some of the homegrown stuff does, and some options for people. Go read the article. It was posted to Ars Technica, and he did a fantastic job with it. He recommends Ubiquity. And this isn't just someone that's like, Off-the-shelf routers are crap. You should build your own. Use pfSense. Okay, done. I'm dropping the mic. Like, this dude has performance graphs, like the whole 9 yards. So he did a really great job with the article, and I want to give props to him.
Hasn't Ars Technica been kicking all kinds of ass lately, like with their articles? They seem to be doing
If they're like
really
this one,
good.
I tell you what, I was impressed.
Ooh, that one's got colors.
Yeah, this past
This was,
year, they've really
look,
stepped
it's like
up.
Buffalo, Linksys, Homebrew, like the whole thing. He's got it all, like, charted out. It's pretty good.
nice.
It's pretty thorough.
I would like to find one where I can get a span port on it. That would be very nice.
It would be an interesting business proposition to come up with a company that actually made like a nice Wi-Fi router. And I think you reach a point where you have to mass produce it at such a scale that it starts to suck.
Well, it's
right?
the
I
hardware,
like-
the software.
I like
to
Paul. Our
support it,
business
so there
model.
needs
Our
to be a-
business model should be making something that's not shit. Who's with me?
Right.
Who's like, that's brilliant.
Yes, let's make something that's not shit. But then we realized we'd make no money,
So we're gonna
right?
hit up
Because it
Kevin-
would cost $300, which is like, well, I guess $300 actually.
No. $300 is not that bad.
It's
for a
not
good
that bad
Wi-Fi.
now. It used to be a lot. Now it's not that
I
bad.
worked this out. It's an $800 router.
Yeah, I was
I've
gonna say,
already
if
gone
it's-
through this equation.
It's going to be more expensive. Hey, can we talk about recent lawsuits?
Oh, thank you,
Yeah.
Jeff.
Oh yes.
Please.
Oh, John, and I want to
John's
get.
take
Yeah,
on
I
this.
do want to
John's
hear
getting
John's
excited
take
now.
on this because John has. This is a topic that you have talked about on the show before,
So
or maybe
Go ahead,
not.
go
Maybe
ahead.
that was
Somebody
just
set it
with
up.
me.
No. I know exactly. Okay, good. Somebody talk about it. Go.
so frame it, Paul.
So TrustWave is being sued by U.S. casino chain Affinity Games because a credit card breach happened and they failed to detect and stop a malware incident on Affinity servers, which led to the escalation of the previous breach.
That's a really poor description.
That is a horrible description, isn't
So
it?
TrustWave is being sued because they were called in after a breach to not do the
clean it up.
forensics, not to do the forensics to catch the.
They said
the perpetrator.
investigate and stop a credit card breach.
was
Investigate
both.
figure out what the problem was so they could plug the holes, fix the problem, and move on. And TrustWave apparently missed something or a few things, and now they're being sued for it. Go.
But it gets worse. I mean, Mandiant shows up. and they
Mandiant
start
comes
doing
in, was brought in to
investigation.
mop up TrustWave's mess, is what the headline read.
Well, that isn't how it started. It was another quote unquote a separate incident later, and then Mandiant found out that TrustWave never cleaned it up.
Okay.
and
And
that's
actually,
why it gets
Mandiant
worse.
went on record as saying, and that's part of the lawsuit, part of the filing, that, and I forget the exact verbiage. I don't know if it's in that article, but TrustWave basically did a piss poor job of doing their forensic job.
I think it was legal. I think the legal verbiage was piss poor. I think it was there.
It was something along that line.
So this gets, and this also should be a wake up call for pen testing companies. And that doesn't mean that that TrustWave doesn't do pen testing. They just suck at it. But if you're looking, if you're looking at these, if you look at these puppy mills, right? I was talking to someone who was an employee at
They
TrustWave.
were. I just want to go on record saying they weren't always
Are
like
they a
that either.
sponsor?
They
No, they
were,
weren't.
and they
No, they
were
weren't.
at one time. They were a sponsor of this show.
Okay.
When like
and they were
all
good then.
yeah, when all the cool kids worked there, they were
Pre-acquisition.
they were a sponsor.
Okay, go ahead.
Putting that
So-
out there.
So yeah, and I would agree with that. There's a lot of good that came from TrustWave, and it's since left.
Yeah.
No, there's good people. There's still good testers at
that's the
TrustWave,
later.
but it's a bigger problem than that, right?
Right.
The problem is talking to these pen test puppy mill people, whether it's TrustWave, whether it's what is the new O company that. Crap.
I think
can't
it's
remember
oh
the new one.
crap. Is it oh crap? Is that
Oh
the
crap.
oh crap?
Oh crap.
Might be
Osiris or something. But you talk to these pen test puppy mills and you talk to the testers, and all the time it's the same thing. It's like, this week I am doing 5 penetration tests. And if I don't complete the reports on an average of like 3 to 4 a week, then I go under performance review and they cut my salary and I don't meet my bonus and I can't get this stuff done quick enough. I'm basically just printing reports. I'm looking for a tool that'll convert Nesascan results into Word document format that I can edit, and they're
And
completely
make it look like a
completely
pen
messed up.
test and not a scan report.
Right.
And make it look like a pen test. They even have reporting templates for some of these companies where they export the results and then they search through the entire report looking for Nessus or Nexpose or whatever, and they replace it with the name of their company.
Right.
So these guys are just at their wits' end. This is going to happen more. And at BHIS, we try really, really hard. And I know in Guardians is the exact same way. I know for a fact Trusted Sec is the exact same way. Their testers do one thing, or at least they try. There may be some bleed over from week to week, but I'm always telling people, understand that the next company that's coming after BHIS is going to be in Guardians. It's going to be Trusted Sec. It's going to be a quote unquote competitor that we trust quite a bit, and we want to make sure that that pen tester that shows up the next time cries, and that is our goal. But this is bad for the industry as a whole. Insurance rates are going to go up, and why is it always TrustWave? Just out of curiosity, that seems to get sued.
Oh boy,
Don't know.
well, because TrustWave's the industry leader in a certain segment, and
That likes to sue people.
well, that has a pretty bad track record of companies being breached.
Yeah.
Where TrustWave
Yeah.
was the
QSA
of record. I mean,
Yep.
virtually all of the major breaches that have been reported in the last 10, 15 years, TrustWave's the QSA.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so part of the issue is just because we've done forensics or pen testing or whatever doesn't mean we've caught it all.
Yeah, we got that in our reports too.
Right. So
and
the Latin term is caveat emptor, I believe.
Well, that's an important point because even companies that do exhaustively good work, and I would put us in that category, you still can't catch it all, right?
Right.
You do your best. You do your level best to get as comprehensive, broad, and deep as you can.
Right.
But there is no such thing as complete 100% guarantee that you've caught all the possible problems with that, application, network, whatever the target might be.
Which
and
is
that's
understandable.
A big concern.
But Mandiant, for some reason, thought that TrustWave didn't even meet the minimal level of competence for this particular engagement, and that's why it's going to a lawsuit.
Yeah,
So,
that's a whole different level right there.
So, what is a fair expectation for all the companies that are out there that hire any of us at any capacity? But specifically in this case, it's forensics. How do you measure? How do you determine? Okay, they've done a reasonable job. And
well, dude, that is such a good point, and I think that TrustWave is going to get off on this.
I think they will too.
That sounds
Interesting theory.
so.
Out of context.
They keep getting off on it.
Yeah.
Phrasing. Are we still
Phrasing.
Horrible phrasing.
I hate to cut you guys short, but unfortunately we do have to wrap up the show. We're running a little short on time. I know we could sit around and drink
So it
and
was
talk.
length all night, and now it's short.
Yes,
Yeah,
we could sit around and drink and talk all night. We'll reserve that for when we're at a conference together.
But instead we can go smoke.
Well, this is worth bringing up again.
Now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So thanks, everyone, for listening and watching. That concludes this edition of Security Weekly. We will see everyone next week.